Hi, Axel. Hope you're having a good day. Good morning. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, and this is 10 on Tuesdays. I'm Holly Hoffman, founding partner and CEO of the Sales and Income Tax Advisory Network. I'm a former Wisconsin Department of Revenue auditor, speaker, and sales tax law expert. Well, I'm not a former sales tax law expert, but formerly for the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. I made the decision last October to leave DOR to use my experience to work directly for you, the Wisconsin businesses. The Sales and Income Tax Advisory Network is focused on helping businesses through this unprecedented time by focusing on advising and training. So what we're focusing is advising businesses how to minimize their sales tax liabilities and look for possible refund claims to file. Training owners and staff on how to improve their sales tax record keeping and reporting processes to reduce cost and risk. And then training, really empowering owners as to how to navigate a sales tax audit, which is what we're also doing here on 10 on Tuesdays. My website, salesandincomeTax.com, showcases two important services and special rates available: the Sales and Use Tax Compliance Assessment and Audit Defense. So please check them out at salesandincomeTax.com. I also offer support services to other tax advisors, other accounting and law firms. If they need tax law training for staff, experienced advisory services for audits, or general sales and use tax law guidance and support, I can provide that to them. So check it out on my website under Memberships, Tax Advisors Network. Thank you for joining my web chats 10 on Tuesdays, every Tuesday from 10 to 10:30 a.m. Last week, I started a topic series about sales and use tax audit, and we're going to continue that topic today, discussing what to do in an audit. You can check out previous episodes on my 10 on Tuesdays channel. To find my channel, go to salesandincomeTax.com/event and click on 10 on Tuesdays. You'll find links there for registration, our Facebook group, and the 10 on Tuesdays channel. Today, we're going to be talking about what to do in an audit. So I was a DOR auditor for 4 years and then spent another 4 years providing auditors technical tax law guidance and training. I fully understand the emotional and personal aspect of an audit, and it's normal for your response to be fear and stress. But what's the cause of that response? Well, I'm going to tell you, it's the fear of the unknown and the feeling that you have no control in an audit. The goal of this series on sales and use tax audits is to shed light on audits so you understand it and are in control. Because audit outcomes, I believe, are 60% what you did during the audit period and 40% how you manage the audit. So we're going to talk about managing the audit without stress and fear, 3 ways to reduce the impact of an audit, and the number 1 biggest mistake in an audit. So let's get started. How do you manage the audit without stress and fear? I mean, it's a natural response. First, I want you to take a deep breath. You receive the audit notice, so this audit's happening. It's kind of like giving birth, whether you want to or not, the baby's coming out. I've gone through a lot in my life, and I've learned that procrastination, worry, fear, and being sick with stress doesn't make me feel better, and it doesn't fix the source of my anxiety. So whatever the painful experience is, in this case, an audit, the best way to deal with it is like you're suiting up for a big game. You get prepared, you use your nerves to light a fire in you, and you strategize. An audit's not a big game, and that's part of the stress. The sheer size and scope of an audit can be overwhelming, but what you need to do is to take it step by step. Next week, we'll talk about the steps in an audit. Today, I'm going to give you some strategic tips that keep you on track and feeling in control, which is going to reduce your stress and fear. First tip we want to talk about is work with an expert who's on your side. Whether you hire someone to fully represent you or you're going to consult with someone during the audit, just having a trusted expert who understands the laws and the audit policy puts you on equal ground with the auditor. Nothing's going to make you feel more in control. It gives you peace of mind that you know what's going on, And the expert will keep you focused on what's really important, what you can do, and what not to waste your time on. The expert will notice things you don't, and together you'll make a very strong team to come out of the audit in the best position you can. Second tip, we talked about this last week. Guide the auditor. Have confidence in what you know about your business to help the auditor quickly find what they need to review with limited exposure to any other information. The auditor has a checklist of things to review, maybe a couple specific issues to review. However, if the auditor sees or questions something else along the way, it's going to draw out the audit and possibly result in additional tax. So guide the auditor. 3, take time to respond. We talked about this last week. I can't help it. Some of these points are like so crucial and so basic. Don't feel like this is an interrogation. It's not. It's an audit of records. So when the auditor asks you questions and you want to say, yes, let me look into that for you and I will get back to you. I swear to God, that's the same script that the auditor is using for you. Same way with arguments against assessments. Before you start arguing a very narrow point to reduce an assessment, take time to look into it and think through your position. You may win that argument, but create a different, much larger assessment with your statements on how the transaction occurred. And I know this is part of that thing that causes fear during audit, but this is where your expert helps to guide you. Number 4, understand the audit process. And we're going to cover this topic next week. What I want to say is that for someone who's not familiar with the audit process, the first few steps can completely shut them down with fear and overwhelming defeat. Why? Well, one of the first steps is record review. I mean, it seems like the auditor looks at every single little paper, every file, and then after they look at everything you can possibly give them, they still request more information. I should say that's what the auditor does. It doesn't seem like they do it. That's what they do. But it's because the auditor doesn't know your business. And so they're trying to learn your business while conducting the audit. So when they're out there doing record review, they don't know what records are important. And this is where my tip number 2 comes in about guiding the auditor. You or your expert needs to guide the auditor. Okay, and then you survive the records review to get a bunch of spreadsheets that seem to say every purchase, sale you owe tax on. I mean, it's hard to understand, and you start looking and get frustrated because things are listed that you know you paid tax on, or your customer was exempt, whatever it may be. I mean, you're just thinking, I don't have time for this. Or, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but you get these initial spreadsheets and assume the auditor knows the proper tax treatment, and this must be the results of the audit. No, no, it's not the results. The auditor is not even saying that things listed are for sure taxable. Okay, so if you understand the audit process, you know what to expect, and you know exactly what you need to do next to move forward. So 3 ways to reduce the impact of an audit. Yes, this part's huge. You want to be proactive in an audit or any situation that causes you stress or anxiety, right? How do you get proactive in an audit? You may feel that an audit just happens to you. No, you're key to the results of your audit. So number 1, we talked about this last week. You want to start a reverse audit immediately. And this can be started as soon as you get that audit notice. Again, this is where your expert can be of assistance. You will want to review all sales, purchases, exemption certificates, fixed assets, sales and purchases, your prior returns, your processes to see if you qualify for exemptions you didn't take. Yeah, it's a full audit of your own records. You're looking for overpayment of tax, anything and everything. Anywhere is great, but the early years of the audit are really important to offset tax and interest the auditor may assess. Plus, if you have a successful audit where very little to no tax is assessed, You will actually get a refund check for the tax you paid in error. And suddenly audit isn't so bad. A good expert can do this review fairly quickly, and that expert should know how to put together the information to request a refund. And this will go through the auditor and be part of the audit. Number 2, find documentation to support your argument. I talked about strategy and also about taking time to think about your response. Do not waste your time arguing based on emotion. I know everything about audit is personal to you, but you want to come out on top, so you need to think strategically. Make your argument and show with documentation, whether it's records, logs, receipts, statements, whatever it may be. Show the auditor the pattern or documentation that proves your point. If you've lost some records, think about other ways to recreate those records or documentation that would support your stance. A couple quick examples on that. Auditor lists some purchases because of missing receipts or invoices. You know that it's a vendor you purchase from regularly and they always charge you tax. So show the auditor the vendor file and that the other receipts have tax. That's going to be sufficient documentation for that auditor to remove those items. Another one, auditor lists sales you didn't charge tax on because they were delivered out of state. But your invoice doesn't indicate delivery took place out of state. But you know one of your employees have been delivering products out of state. So how do you prove that? Well, you can look to travel expenses, maybe employee timesheets, mileage logs. If the activities are listed there, that would be sufficient. You can match up dates and deliveries through these records to show proof that out-of-state delivery occurred. Other places you might look, vendors, banks, credit card companies can also provide missing documentation for you, but a lot of times you have to pay for them. So you want to be sure that the cost is worth the benefit. You also want to check with the auditor whether or not the documentation would be acceptable. I mean, why pay the bank to obtain canceled checks, but then find out the auditor can't accept them as proof of tax paid because the check amount doesn't identify if tax or how much tax was paid. Again, this is where your expert can help you focus your time and energy. 3, focus. So you have a limited time. I mean, you're busy running your business. You don't have so much additional time to mess around with this audit. And if you hired an expert, you got limited money to pay your expert. You don't want to save $10,000 on your audit, but pay your expert $15,000 to represent you in the audit, okay? So you want to be wise with your time and resources. So you want to be sure to get bang for your buck. When the auditor presents you with the spreadsheets listing questionable purchases and sales, you want to start focusing in on listed items with the largest dollar amounts. That's the first thing you should do. If they give you a spreadsheet that you can actually sort things, I would say go ahead and sort things on that spreadsheet based on dollar amount. Some of the largest dollar amount items might be fixed assets. That's always a huge one, so always zero in on fixed assets. You might have certain customers that are high dollar customers based on what type of services you provide them. And then certain vendors, you might purchase a lot of things from certain vendors, certain key vendors. So those would be things that you would definitely want to focus in on first. The next thing that you also want to focus in on is items that occur frequently. So same vendor or customer that has a lot of purchases or sales, you want to address that because you're going to figure out what the issue is, and then all those should be removed at the same time, depending on what the issue is, but generally. If certain products or services, certain invoices, sales invoices are listed, maybe you can address, maybe you explain the item or the service in a way that the auditor questioned whether or not it was taxable. Address that. That one's simple, and it would remove a whole bunch of items. Sometimes certain vendors are listed. because certain materials you purchased, and maybe those materials were used in a non-taxable manner. So that would be another one. Pull out that vendor and identify how those materials were used, tie it out, and those will all get removed. So often you can identify a reason why transactions are not taxable, and it'll wipe out all similar transactions from the audit spreadsheet. So big bang for little resources. Don't focus on the big picture. Don't focus on the total tax amount. You can't do anything with that. Address the big, frequent, and easiest adjustments first. Then when the auditor revises the spreadsheets, take a fresh look at the revised spreadsheet. Now what do you see that can be resolved quickly? At some point, you will only have left what you agree you owe and what is not worth chasing documentation for. And just because you agree you owe tax on certain adjustments doesn't mean the adjustment's not negotiable. And we'll cover audit negotiations in a future episode. So finally, we get to the number one mistake. And this really ties into the fear and stress over an audit, the fear of this big, powerful government entity with this expert who knows more about tax than anyone you could afford to hire, right? I mean, I think that's what people think. Do not assume the auditor knows. Let me tell you, an auditor is not an expert in your industry, huge. They're not an expert in how you maintained your books. They're not an expert necessarily in sales and use tax law. Maybe they are in some areas, but might not be in your business. And they may not even be an expert auditor. They may be a newer auditor, or maybe they've been with DOR for a while but haven't audited your industry before. So do not give up your power to ask questions, provide evidence, participate in your audit process. Your auditor is just a person. Even the top folks at DOR disagree about tax issues, okay, honestly. So don't hesitate to have a discussion and request published guidance from the auditor or tax law, statutes, or administrative code to support what they're saying. And read that information. See if it fits your situation and if there's additional guidance that supports your viewpoint. Look, you know a lot more than you give yourself credit for, so please don't sell yourself short and don't just accept what is being told to you. And if you and the auditor come to an impasse, or you're not comfortable with the auditor's determination, you don't feel it was explained well, you're not getting it, contact the supervisor. We talked about that last week. You have the supervisor's contact info from the audit notice you received. And I just want to explain, this is not at all unusual for the supervisor to be contacted. It doesn't upset the auditor. I mean, well, of course, you got to be respectful and clear about the issue. But absolutely, if it comes to a point where you're not comfortable, don't just accept it. Go to the next level. Talk to the supervisor. Absolutely utilize the supervisor as a resource during the audit. So what we talked about today is managing the audit. You want to work with an expert who's on your side. We talked about a lot of different ways that an expert can help you. Guide the auditor, take time to respond, understand the audit process. So you know what you're looking for, what you're doing at each step, and what the purpose is. 3 ways to reduce the impact of an audit. Do a reverse audit. Absolutely necessary. Auditor doesn't do that part. You got to do that part. Find documentation to support your argument. Don't waste your time. And focus largest adjustments and most frequent transactions first. And then don't assume that the auditor knows everything. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. Initial consultations are free, so don't hesitate to discuss your situation with me. I have more information on my website at salesandincometax.com, so you can also reach me there. Next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the audit process. And I I guess maybe because I've been auditing and familiar with the audit process, I just assumed people knew there is a pamphlet DOR puts out about the audit process, but a lot of people I'm running into are not familiar with it. So really important. I mean, if you have other friends or coworkers or other local businesses or associations, let them know that we're talking about this next week. Big topic. And that is all I have for today. Next Tuesday, be sure to join me. Have a great week. Stay healthy. Hope all businesses get back to normal quickly. Oh my gosh, can't wait. And I'm going to unmute people so they can ask questions. Anyone got questions or anything they want to ask? All right, I want to thank everyone for joining me. I suddenly got a tickle in my throat, but thanks for joining me. I hope today was helpful. Next week, we're going to talk about audit process. I think that's going to be an eye-opener for some people if you haven't been through an audit before. Definitely tune in, and I will see you then. Have a good week.